This is the first of a few episodes this week from all the finalists at the RSA Innovation Sandbox competition. Today, I talk with Yoni Shohet, the CEO and co-founder of Valence Security. Yoni's a second-time founder, and he talks about the roller coaster of being a founder, being in an early stage startup. He talks about how easy it was or not to raise the seed round that they did, how they enable access to your SaaS tools by third parties rather than either be blind to it completely or always be denying, and how he thinks about the time to value and the importance of remediation. Don't go away. Welcome to the Sales Bluebird podcast, where we help cybersecurity startups grow sales faster. I am your host, Andrew Monahan. Our guest today is Yoni Shohet, co-founder and CEO at Valence Security. Yoni, welcome to Sales Bluebird.
Hey, Andrew. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to our conversation, Yoni, for a couple of reasons. One is you're now a two-time founder in cybersecurity, so you've got some experiences to draw from, I guess, from the first time around as you've been starting and helping to build Valence in the last couple of years. And then secondly, huge excitement for the company is that Valence have been selected as a finalist, final 10 companies in the RSA Innovation Sandbox competition at the RSA conference coming up in a couple of weeks here in the US. So this is an exciting time, I'm sure, for the company. Clearly, you're doing something innovative, so I want to learn what that's all about and see what we can learn from our conversation today. All right, let me switch to your LinkedIn profile here, Yoni. So like many founders in cybersecurity out of Tel Aviv, you spent a few years in the IDF in Israel there. And then in 2014, when you came out of the IDF, you co-founded SCADAfence. And SCADAfence has been going ever since. It's, I guess, by the name, it's a company in the kind of OT, IoT, critical infrastructure space. Tell me about the starting moments of SCADAfence.
Yeah, so when I finished my service as a captain in the Israeli intelligence forces, I knew I wanted to continue and be in the cybersecurity world and to focus on innovation and to leverage my different skill sets from the technical aspects through more of the innovation side of it. And I co-founded SCADAfence pretty quickly with one of my friends from the Army and one of my buddies from the Army, focusing really on industrial IoT cybersecurity and on critical infrastructure and how to help shop floor or manufacturing and critical infrastructure companies to protect their shop floor environments. And mostly taking into advantage a lot of knowledge that we gained about how attacks look like in the real world to help organizations protect themselves from these scenarios and to be well prepared for these types of attacks. So, and I think that after you go through a few years in the kind of a military service, there's no replacement for that excitement and for the thrill of working on these types of tasks and day-to-day lifestyle. And entrepreneurship was the closest thing I could find to that. So looking into continuing that type of a lifestyle, I felt like something I had to do.
And in terms of the lifestyle, I mean, that becoming an entrepreneur, it's not for everyone, but some people just take to it. But there's no doubt when you get into it, it goes in many different directions. I'm wondering, as you look back at SCADAfence, if there was one thing that really surprised you about what it was like to start a cybersecurity company that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I think the roller coaster is something you hear about all the time, but it's unbelievable how distant the ups and downs are, and how you can go through extreme highs and extreme lows, and even if let's say to the extreme you're at 90% at a low, you still remember the 10% of highs that you experienced because you learn to enjoy the good and not to focus only on the things that go wrong, because you have to take risks and you have to go through mistakes. I think probably most of the decisions you make as an entrepreneur, especially a first-time entrepreneur, are mistakes, and you need to live with that, and you need to learn to enjoy the good parts of these experiences. And I think nobody can prepare you to that roller coaster and how good you can feel one day and how bad you can feel the other day.
Yeah, that's interesting. I talked to Eric Orden about a month ago. Eric is the CEO and founder of Strata Identity. And he sold his first two companies to RSA, so he's third time around. And he talked about the difference between driving on a dirt road and driving on a highway. He said, the dirt road, there's no road. You're out there in the prairie. You're hopefully in an ATV or something like that, but you hope it's got roll cage because you're going to be rolling over every so often unexpectedly, and you need to roll back up on right sides pretty quickly and keep going and just kind of expect it to happen again and again and again. And yeah, she said, when he's hiring his early employees, he needs to find people who have the personal roll cage as opposed to the people who are used to driving their slick Mercedes down the highway, expecting it all to be so smooth.
Yeah, makes sense.
It does, doesn't it? So let's fast forward. March 2021, Valence Security was founded. Take me back to that moment. You're a co-founder, so who were you with, and what were you talking about, and what caused you to say, you know what, we're going to do another startup?
Yeah, so after I left Skate Offense, I knew I wanted to do another startup. I had no doubt in my heart. I knew that this is the path I was looking for. I was looking for the right idea and the right team to do it with. And then COVID started at the beginning of 2020, which was an interesting time to do ideation and looking for co-founders because there's a lot of bonding you need to make with the team and to better understand what is exactly the path you're going towards. And I think late 2020, when the SolarWinds attack campaign occurred, where attackers showed again and again how vulnerable our relationships with third-party vendors are, then in Hebrew we like to say it's like mushrooms after the rain. It was clear to me that a lot of companies are going to start based on what happened in the SolarWinds attack campaign because they're going to say and claim that they're going to solve the SolarWinds problem. But we looked at it, Shlomi, my co-founder, and I looked at it from a different angle, saying, looking at specific techniques that attackers leveraged. And one of them was that after they hacked SolarWinds and after they leveraged the different supply chain aspects there, they hacked into third-party vendors like email security vendors and leveraged their access to other SaaS applications to gain unauthorized access. So basically, they leverage these non-human access controls or access tokens that exist between the business applications that we trust in order to gain unauthorized access to very sensitive information, in this case, emails. And then we knew that if this can happen and it goes undetected, then this is something that we can focus on and start solving. And we started talking with quite a few CISOs in the industry, which we saw again and again that everybody realizes that they have this problem of how do they protect access to their core business applications, but there isn't an existing solution or an approach that can really help them tackle that. So with that, we started to raise our seed and got going.
How easy was it to raise the seed round?
It's never easy. I think it's a lot of matter of timing. It wasn't a very long process for us. Luckily, it wasn't a very long process for us. We're a strong team that comes from the right background, and I think we're also in the right location. We were in the right location in Israel to raise from the strong VCs like Wild Ventures that eventually led our $7 million seed. So I wouldn't say it was an easy process, but I think we had a lot of different opportunities to partner with different venture capitalists at that time. And we were lucky and to have enough opportunities to eventually choose the best one for us and move forward.
That's great. Going back to the problem that you're trying to solve, if at that time, 2021, there was no Valence, what were people doing then to try and solve that? Was it just nothing, or was it limited choices from people who kind of sort of solved it, but not really?
So we saw one of three options: either customers that block the ability to leverage capabilities within SaaS applications. Eventually, when we look today at SaaS applications, they become so complex, right? SaaS applications are now basically platforms. You can share data, create integrations, onboard new third-party vendors through marketplace and extensions and third-party apps, create users, share with external collaborators. You can create so many different actions. These actions are empowered today to the business users themselves, right? The marketing person, the salesperson, the developer, the IT engineer, the HR manager, each one of them can create these types of configurations within these applications. And a lot of organizations just went and blocked them completely, saying, okay, you can't share files on OneDrive with external collaborators. That's blocked. If you need something, come and talk to IT. Or they blocked the third-party integrations and just completely disabled that capability, which is not very good for security teams. They block innovation. They become the masters of no. Nobody really wants to do that. But they didn't really have a good solution. So the last resort was saying, okay, at least let's not create exposure, allow to create exposure. Second option is to go through kind of homegrown tools, which are usually without the proper coverage of the entire risk surface and provide only partial control over what the real risk surface was. The third option is doing nothing, which is usually the case in security, I think, where a lot of organizations don't really have a good solution, but they don't have a good alternative. So they just hope that their priorities are correct and that they're focusing on the highest risk first. But we saw these three main categories, I think.
So then a company would have to sit there and go, okay, is this something worth solving? So to tackle your status quo thing, right? Is it even worth us putting the effort in to solve it? And then why would we work with a company and what could they deliver for us in the short term? One of the hot things has been for a while now, but certainly in this moment this year with the economic climate is people talking about time to value. When you were starting off on the journey, how did you think about how do we help our customers get value in minutes, days, and weeks as opposed to months, quarters, and years?
Yeah, so a lot of our value is based on an analysis of the current state of the applications that we protect. So when a customer connects us to Salesforce, Slack, GitHub, Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, and their core SaaS applications, they immediately, usually takes, let's say, up to an hour, they get an analysis of their entire risk surface that is related to these core SaaS applications. But what we've realized is that for a lot of teams, that's not enough. Showing them, hey, these are all your problems, good luck, go solve them, is not enough in today's security environment. And quickly, our customers pushed us towards a remediation. So we built and we baked into our platform the ability to actually tackle and solve these problems. For example, if we show you that you have too many files shared externally on Google Drive or OneDrive, we can help you remove unnecessary shares at a click of a button. You don't need to go through a complex process and start writing code and write scripts. You can just click 2 or 3 buttons and you're ready, and you can set up a policy that helps to show you that decreasing graph of the risk surface, not just an increasing graph of problems. So I think that's really the aha moment that we see a lot of our customers have, which is we go beyond that visibility, which is becoming more and more of a table stakes for a lot of security vendors. And we go into, okay, here's the 3 buttons that you can click, and your problems are going to start to decrease, and you're going to start to see a much cleaner environment, which is very, very powerful for our customers.
Yeah, I love that you've done that. I mean, remediation is such a strong value prop right now for people because they are fed up of the, 1,000 alerts, 10,000 alerts, whatever it might be. Alerting and getting visibility is one thing, but then knowing what to do with it quickly without needing a team of 50 people to fix it is kind of important these days, it seems.
Definitely.
So let's go down to brass tacks a little bit here, Yoni. So we've got RSA coming up in 2 or 3 weeks now. We're recording this in early April 2023. If someone walks up to your booth at RSA and says to one of your team members, "What does Valence do?" What do you want them to say? How do you want them to answer that question?
Yeah, so I think the core element that we're focused on at Valence is that we help security teams collaborate with the business users to protect their SaaS applications. Meaning that what we allow and what we enable within the platform, in addition to the remediation or within the scope of the remediation, is 2 core elements. One is automation and allow you to automate a lot of the manual tasks that are required for your day to day. The second element is collaboration with the business users. Because the biggest challenge for security teams today when it comes to SaaS security is not knowing about problems, but to understand the context of the problems and risks that they have. Because they don't know what is Salesforce or how Salesforce should be configured, or what is this new OAuth that has access to their GitHub, What they need is to work with the business users to help communicate, hey, this is a risk that we've identified. Do we actually need this configured this way, or can we think about an alternative way to improve the security posture of our data and applications and collaborate with them in an automated way? And that combination between automation, collaboration, and remediation is the key to success when it comes to Valence and to help actually solve these SaaS security risks that we see in a modern environment.
So for me, two things stood out for that. I think just listening to you is a little bit different. One is the collaboration with the business. I don't hear many people talking about that in terms of our product, helping them to do that. Right? They want to do it, obviously, but it's more a communication thing. So that's kind of interesting. And then the second thing, obviously, is the remediation side we talked about. Uh, People are crying out for that right now, and not many. It seems like it's also something you start off with the first V1 of the product you put remediation in, but it's something that needs to come pretty quickly because people are going to be fed up seeing your alerts all the time.
Yeah, so I think very quickly we had to add it because otherwise our customers would tell us, okay, guys, you're just showing me another problem that I don't have time to solve. And I think the most repetitive quote I heard from CISOs over the past couple of years is, if I see a problem, I need to be able to solve it. And if you're showing me a problem that I cannot solve, I have an issue.
Right. No, I get that for sure. And I would imagine another question you probably get a bit from people as they first hear about you is how you're different to CASB, right? SaaS apps and protecting SaaS apps, things like that. Doesn't a CASB do this? How do you answer that question?
Yeah, so I think first of all, most customers that I've met, they are not satisfied with how their CASBs are deployed and how they're protecting their current SaaS applications. I think CASBs are very focused on the user to SaaS access, meaning how are my users accessing SaaS applications, from where, from which devices, using what type of authentication method, and these types of elements. And the market is shifting and consolidating CASB, secure web gateway, and zero trust network access into a secure service edge as a category. And therefore, most of the CASB vendors are not really focused on the depth and breadth of SaaS applications. They don't see SaaS applications as platforms that have complex configurations built into them. And SaaS applications are no longer just something you need to treat as a box and you need to protect the access to the box, but you need to protect the box and its content and to make sure that when you look at what's configured within it, you don't have a user that is misconfiguring it. So, for example, one of the major breaches that we've seen that were focused on SaaS applications over the past year were breaches against GitHub as an application, where attackers realized that they can hack into legitimate third-party vendors, such as Heroku, Travis CI, Circle CI, steal their OAuth tokens and their access tokens that they have that are configured by developers and by legitimate GitHub users, and leverage these tokens to gain direct access to GitHub tenants. Now, it's not a vulnerability in GitHub. It's nothing a CASB could help protect because it's focused on that user to SaaS layer. But once you focus on those non-human identities that have access to your core SaaS applications through APIs and programmatic access, then this is something that you can really expose a lot of your data through unauthorized access. And today it's just something that the vast majority of CASBs are just completely blind to because it's not a focus area for them how the SaaS is being configured and whether or not the user made a mistake or created some kind of an exposure within the SaaS application itself.
Yeah, completely different then, really, right? From that user to SaaS layer, which is where that's what CASB's got their initial hype was, shining light on this problem of the shadow apps that are in place. That's not the problem that you're solving. It goes much deeper than that. Which, you know, I'm wondering as people look at your demo and as you start talking to them, what's the thing that they see in your flow or the thing in the deck, if you use a deck, that they go, oh, I get it now, and I get why this is different. Is there a specific moment in time where that's always the point in the conversation they get it?
So I think we have two peaks. One is when we show everything the users have configured within their SaaS applications. So most of the CISOs are very excited when they see all the Calendlys, the Grammarlys, the Gongs that have access through APIs to their core SaaS applications and start to see that this automated discovery. And they say, oh, I didn't realize that we have so many different vendors that our users have onboarded without our consent. Alternatively, it can be the external data sharing. What's very interesting is that when we show organizations their risk surface that is related to OneDrive and SharePoint and Google Drive and these types of productivity suites. We find that somewhere between 90 to 95% of files shared with external collaborators haven't been accessed by these external collaborators for at least a quarter, meaning that we share so much data. Usually it's six figures, if not more, of files and content, but nobody uses it. And we give them a button, which is where we close the loop and create the aha moment for us. We give them a button that allows them to clean up these issues. And then when they see that they can actually solve the problems and that we already incorporated the best practices based on all the different conversations we already had with other security teams, and that there's already some kind of I would say a standard in how security teams expect to solve these issues, then they get very excited. They say, okay, I saw the problem, I can solve it. Let's go. Let's click these buttons. Let's start cleaning it up.
So it's literally a button they can press.
Literally a button.
Wow. That must be compelling for them to see that. You mean you don't have a 10-step workflow with integrations and Zapier links and things like that?
No. They can, obviously they can customize it as much as they want, but
Right.
the default settings are set and they could click next, and it's done.
That's awesome. Let's take a step up a little bit. So, right now there's, I don't know, 3,300 cybersecurity vendors. I think 1,900 of them have less than 50 employees. So there's a lot of very scrappy startups out there trying to make their way, which makes it tough to try and get more than your fair share of attention in the marketplace. How are you thinking about position the company and how you do things out there so people will actually remember you, take notice, and say, I remember Valence from that thing I saw, whatever it might be, or that thing I read. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what we do in terms of marketing, and we started doing marketing pretty early for us within the first year of the company. We think about it not just of how do I generate leads or how do I increase my pipeline, but also how do I contribute to the market. So, for example, we release a lot of times reports about the risks and about the findings that we have from the market, and we try to make sure that we contribute as much as we can to the market and to the industry. I think that's something that's critical for us to establish that thought leadership and to make sure that we're creating value for the market, even if it's not to generate more opportunities and more leads for us as a company. And I think eventually cybersecurity, especially because of the numbers that you mentioned, is a go big or go home type of market, right? Yeah, you can't build a company that will exit in several tens of millions of dollars after a year or two. You can't build for that. Maybe that will happen for certain companies, maybe not. But it's go big and go home, and you need to make sure that you're aggressive on creating the market awareness for what you're doing and why you're doing that. So that's why we pretty quickly raised our Series A that Microsoft led at $25 million, which also creates a lot of buzz and also creates a lot of awareness. We're working with these strategic partners. So we recently onboarded our platform to become co-sale ready and transactable through the marketplace in Azure. So that it makes it more accessible for customers, mutual customers of us and Microsoft to adopt the solution. And it's being creative. It's being all the time thinking about how do you do something that is different, not doing the most straightforward and obvious way, because then you'll just seem like one of many companies.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I like what you're saying. Go big or go home, and in everything, right? You can't. I say to people, this is not the time to be holding back.
Yeah.
You got to be a bit bold. You got to. I think you got to be a little bit controversial at times. Say something that makes people stop and go, "Well, hold on. What do you mean by that?" As opposed to a bunch of bland vendor speak out there. One of the things I noticed on your site is you've got an impressive list of advisors here, including Justin Semani, Phil Venables, people like that. What role do they play in trying to get the word out about Valence?
Yeah, so we usually don't see our advisors as something that we leverage more for the marketing aspect. They really help us with advice and with helping us build a better company. Obviously, some of them help us and pitch into different content that we create, webinars and others. But the vast majority of them mostly provide us critical advice. I think out of that list is probably the Wild Ventures played a more integral aspect of building market awareness for the company, because YL as a fund is very focused, or is only focused on seed investments in cybersecurity in Israel, and they have let's say, both the infrastructure and the playbook to launch companies and to increase their awareness within the US, whether if it's gathering together the dozen of portfolio companies to create events in RSA and in Blackout and in core main events, creating content, raising awareness, creating newsletters, and making sure that we distribute the message, we convey the message about the companies to the market is something that really helped us launch early and maintain a market leadership position early on within our life cycle of a company.
YL is impressive with what they do. It really is, like you were saying. One of my clients is a YL portfolio company, and they've definitely got a program for this, right? They recognize this is a value add. And if I was a founder right now, I'd be looking for companies like YL, like Andreessen Horowitz famously, they've got a whole back end to help companies as well get the awareness out there. It seems like the company, the VCs that had the program to deliver on that is where there's a huge ton of value beyond getting some advice and taking some money from them.
Yeah, definitely. I think as a recommendation for entrepreneurs, you need to, if you can enjoy the value creation that different VCs can provide you, that's great. I think it's important to make sure that the VCs understand that it's value creation to the company and not something that puts them in a different position, I would say, of strength versus the company. I've seen other companies, not YL, but I've seen other companies act differently. But definitely, YL has cracked how to create that value creation for marketing, HR, sales, and others to make sure that they can help their companies in the best way possible.
Yeah, I talked to a CEO last year in the podcast. I forget exactly when it was. And one of his realizations in the first year was, yeah, it was tough to build great products, but it was even tougher to get distribution given the nature of the market, right? Because it's so
Right,
tough to get that awareness, get your fair share or more than your fair share of attention. No matter how good your
right.
stuff is, if people don't, if you can't get to people, it doesn't matter, right? And anyone who can come in with a value added service like that as part of an offering, I think is you got to listen to because it's so important these days. Yoni, before we go any further, let's go to know a little bit more about you. Can you give me three numbers between 1 and 35, and I'll read out the questions they correspond
Uh, 4, 10, and 13.
to? Okay. 4 is, what's the most used app on your phone?
Ooh, yeah. Fortunately, probably the Gmail app or Slack app for internal communications in the company.
Yeah. Do you have notifications switched on for both those, or do you keep them off?
On the phone, I have it. On the computer, I
Yeah, you
have it
do.
turned off.
All right. Yeah, it's a tough one. I try and switch all my notifications off, but what it just means is I go check it anyway. Uh,
Exactly.
uh, but I'm not distracted in the moment. I guess is the advantage of having the switch stuff on the phone. Yeah, so I get it. Slack and Gmail, probably not that different for me, frankly. Um, you said 10. All right, this is an interesting one. There's a big thing about productivity and how you start your day to set up the whole day for success and all this sort of stuff. What does the first hour of your day look like?
So I'm a big believer that you need to always have control over your time and your priorities. So when I start my day, I always go over all the different sources for potential tasks that I may have to do that specific day and make sure that I consolidate it to one list, that I have clear priorities over them so I know exactly what I should expect and not expect to do during that day based on my calendar, my emails, my messages, and my task list. And then if there's any changes I need to make, I can clearly communicate it to people that are dependent on my completion of these tasks. So making sure that I have clear organized day, and then I can kick it off with a clean head and make sure that I'm focused on what matters.
How long does it take you to do that in the mornings?
So usually, because of different zones, I have to first clean up my inbox. So it can take somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour.
Oh wow, okay. And then once you've done that, what happens next? Your
And
your,
then,
your day
depending on
starts.
the priorities, yeah, depending on the priorities, I just start kick off. the most the highest priority task can be creating content, and can be working on some sort of a deal, or working with the product team, whatever it is, depending on where I am and what's the top priority for that day.
And how did you build into your schedule the flex time so that you can respond, or you've got some time set up to work on things that come up during the day?
Yeah, so there I'm not sure if I'm lucky or not, but because I'm currently based out of Israel and most of my day to day is with the US, so I have several hours of advantage before most of the people that I need to talk to during the day start their day. So I have enough time in advance to get ready for my actual business day.
Yeah, you've got an advantage there, that's for sure. It must be nice to have that slightly quieter time at the start of the day to get going. All right, the next number you had was, I think, 13.
13, right?
13 is window or aisle?
Ooh, aisle, always.
Always aisle. Okay. Why aisle?
I don't sleep a lot on flights, and I like to have the flexibility to get up and stretch without having to jump over a couple of people on the way. So always an aisle.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. On longer flights, I do like to walk around as well. Just I can't sit there for 8 hours. Yeah. So not being held back by someone fast asleep and you're frightened to wake them up, right?
Exactly.
So we covered the one of the most important days in a company, which is the founding day. Another important day at a company is that day that you won your first real live paying hard cash customer. Tell us about that day, Yoni, at Valence when you got your first customer.
Yeah, so it's definitely exciting. I think you work on it for months and making sure that you're able to prepare for that moment and to justify eventually and to earn the trust. Obviously, we started by converting our design partners to paying customers, so they already use the platform and they love the platform, and they were the first to pay for it, which is a great testimonial for our value and for the trust that we gained from them. And I think it's definitely an amazing. It was an entire celebration for the company, and everybody were super satisfied to see that as a milestone towards becoming. We like to joke internally, becoming a real company and becoming more and more of a stabilized organization. And very quickly, you change from okay, I have one customer, hooray, this is a celebration, to oh, I have a dozen customers. I have production issues. I have to do prioritization of product requests, and it very quickly becomes that avalanche of the pros and cons of having real life customers. Because until then, until you don't have paying customers, you don't have a lot of commitments. You can do whatever you want with the product, and there's a lot of advantages to not having customers.
One of your peers in Israel said to me a couple of weeks ago, you go from a research project to a real customer, a real
Right.
company at that point, right? People have expectations of you because they paid you money. I remember in the US many years ago, there was an ad. This is probably in the dot-com boom where, they got their e-commerce company going, and you see on the counter on the screen, customer number one, it clicks over. It's like, yes, you got a customer. And then it starts speeding up 20, 50, 100, and their face is like, oh my goodness, you got to stop. I don't think we're ready for this. It's kind of that feeling, right, of something that comes at you and you're stress tested in terms of what you're delivering and how you're doing it very quickly.
100%.
I'd imagine that was one as a founder led selling motion. When did you know it was the right time to start hiring some salespeople?
Yeah, I think that once we've started to see real customers convert end to end, not design partners that converted, but a lead converting into a POC, converting into a paying customer, end to end as a process where we could build an initial playbook to provide our employees saying, okay, this is what you should expect, and this is how you should handle each one of these steps. Was the core element for us saying, okay, we got this, we feel confident about it. And mostly, it's a question to me as the sales leader in the company at that point saying, okay, would I feel comfortable if it's not me taking that call and I'm not on the call at all? Once you feel that you've reached that maturity, then it's the right time to start the hiring. Probably, in my perspective, it's better to hire earlier than later, because very quickly you learn that there are more and more stuff that you need to do, and you don't have more time. As the company grows, very important to start delegating these types of things. So gradually, we're able to move on and to move more and more stuff to our employees and to our sales team, marketing team, product. It's all very similar in terms of the context.
And when people hire their first salespeople, the different ways to go, right? You can hire in more of a leader who then brings people in. You can hire more a junior and have them be a lot more kind of a doer than anything else. Which way did you go on your first couple of hires?
So we did both. So we started with an executive hire, and then we switched to building the team bottom up. So we went through both paths.
And what did you look for in that leader?
So when we were looking for the leader at the beginning, and then we realized it wasn't the right approach for us, and we fixed it. We mostly were looking for somebody that can really build. Like we looked at ourselves as more of a product entrepreneurs, which are more passionate about the problem, about solution, and less about more of the sales mechanics, which again, it's a work of art, and you need to be able to do it properly in order to execute it well. And we were looking for somebody that can bring in a lot of experience there. Um, but I think what we've realized is that, at least for us, and I've seen it work both ways depending on the company, and I think it also very much depends on the individual that joins the company. That for us, it works better to have more of a the more the account executive layers that can actually go and execute on the opportunities, which keeps the right balance of involvement of the founders in the sales, because it does help to accelerate a lot of these processes. There are a lot of things that when I go on a customer call, that I can promise and I can commit to, when it comes to my viewpoint into the organization, saying, yes, we can support that. No, we can't support that. That it's just difficult to do at this point without me. And it's an advantage. It doesn't mean I have to be 100% of the time in the calls, but when I am on the calls, I can really contribute a lot of value to the process and to build that trust and to improve the deliverables that we provide to these prospects.
And when you decided to start the sales team and you were building it, what was the thing that concerned you the most about making that big step?
I think with all hires, my biggest concern is a culture fit, making sure that people fit within the organization. We're building. It's already not a very small. We're already 30 people, but we're building a family, and we need to make sure that the people fit well fit into that chemistry. I think with salespeople, a lot of time the immediate concern is more whether or not they're going to be team players and to be egoless when they come into these types of engagements with, especially with internal stakeholders. Um, but my main concern is to make sure that we have the proper collaboration with when it comes specifically to sales. So making sure that we have good visibility into what's going on in the opportunities, that we know to identify when we need help from each other, and to collaborate on different opportunities, and to make sure that we don't wait until it's too late to fix and improve a different engagement that we have with the market.
I always feel the first AE hire is they've got to be salespeople, but they've got to be learners as well. They've got to have half their mind on, is there a deal? Can I work a deal? Can we get a deal? And half their mind on, what can we learn and what do we understand about this prospect and what they're trying to do that we may or may not be able to address right now or in the future. It's a tough thing to kind of keep your mind on, because you feel sometimes the pressure on, I've got to deliver numbers because I'm a salesperson. It's my job, right? And really some of the value of that person is being able to have their ears wide open to understand what's really going on in these conversations and the market dynamics that they're learning about each and every call.
Right, and I think that's why you really need to focus on that culture fit, because they need to see the better good of the company rather than only their commission. If somebody comes on a sales call, on an interview as a first AE, and they all they care about is their bottom line and how much they're going to make, which is obviously important, and every salesperson needs to think about it. But if that's all they care about, that's where they lead the conversation with. They most likely are not going to think about the better good of the company.
Yeah, I think that's important. I worked for a sales guy, a sales leader many years ago, and he said, if you ever want to know the gaps in the product from a salesperson, and you ask them, you'll just hear what they heard in the last sales call they attended, right? because that's what's front and center for them. I wish we had this, and I wish we had that, and they don't usually have that. Let's take a thought process here over the last 15 calls and figure out where the gaps are, and whether we should even be going after these deals based on where the gaps are, right? And I think that's where you have to get a unique animal that's used to working in that sort of environment, as opposed to someone who's just used to chasing after a number all the time. It's an interesting thing to go after. It's tough to do. It's not for everyone, that's for sure.
For sure.
Last question on the sales side. If you could wave a magic wand, Yoni, and immediately solve the single biggest challenge for your sales people right now, what would you solve for them?
I think probably the biggest challenge I hear also from other organizations, not just for us, but for us, we definitely also feel it, is making sure you have a better way to clearly understand what's going on the other side. Because there are a lot of times where, for a lack of a better term, the other side ghosts you, and you can go follow up by follow up by follow up, and they don't answer. And they answer on the 10th follow up after 4 months. And you ask yourself, why? What happened now that didn't happen 4 months ago, or in every single email that I sent, or LinkedIn message, or call, or whatever it is? And there usually is a good story, right? People aren't doing it on purpose, or maybe they are, but they're not trying to be evil. They just are overwhelmed. There's a personal issue. There's a work issue. It's just not a priority. And if salespeople could have better understand the intent and the actual current status of the other side, it would help them focus on where they can actually deliver value, because they don't want to chase anyone, right? They just want to make sure that they deliver the right value, because then they can close a deal and create for them the right value as well. But the good salespeople want to be good partners for their customers, and they want to know when to back off. So we could have a magic wand where people would just get an automatic reply saying, "Hey, it's not a good time. If you'll follow up at X, maybe it will be a good time, but we can't promise." I think that would save a lot of time on unnecessary emails and creativity to people trying to pick up the phone call and call you from different numbers and everything that we see from different salespeople.
Yeah, it is so tough. I think broadly speaking, salespeople right now are starved for pipeline. Right, the pipeline is tough to get because it is so hard to get noticed and have those valuable calls. So when you do get a meeting, and you do get that second meeting, you feel like, I've got to maximize this, right? And you feel that pressure to, well, I've got to get in touch with them again. I've got to do something. And I think that's somewhat where that pressure comes from. I often also think, Yoni, I don't know if you would agree with this, is that I think one of the things that is the industry in general doesn't do that well is we feel like when a salesperson joins the company, what they need to have is be trained in the product, right? They need to be trained in what the product does, the problems it solves, and all the rest of it. And I always feel like that's important, but I always feel like, what if we actually train them in the prospect? What if we train them in the day in the life of the head of whatever, threat intelligence, the head of the SOC, the CISO, the CISO -1, whoever our ICP is? Why don't we spend 2 days talking about all the things that person's life is all about, so we can understand them better and therefore approach our calls with empathy, as opposed to always feeling like I've got to sell something to this person.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a tough thing to go after sometimes. But listen, I've really enjoyed the conversation today. I know you've got the sandbox coming up in 2 or 3 weeks, which is a big exciting day for the company. I wish you every success with that. If someone wants to get in touch with you and keep the conversation going, or talk about opportunities at Valence, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so either LinkedIn or via email, Yoni, Yoni, at valencesecurity.com is usually the best way.
All right. Well, wish you every success for RSA 2023 and into 2024.
Thank you.
Well, Yoni and the team are tackling a underserved part of the stack, it looks like, from what he was saying. I had 3 takeaways. I'm sure you got your own. First one was the combination of time to value and remediation. 2 things that security tools historically have not been that great at, right? Maybe one of the 2, but not both together. So when I asked him about how he thinks about time to value, he's answered by saying that one of the things that he was asked for very early on by customers and prospects was being able to remediate. So they worked on that early. So now what they're able to say to people is the time to value is fast because we've got remediation in there already. And that often for the prospects is an aha moment. So I really liked how they combined those two different areas, which are often sticking points, and actually made them into a strong point for them in the marketplace. Second one was around the idea they're enabling communication and collaboration for security teams with the business inside their organizations. Now, I think a lot of people would like to think they do, or it's some sort of secondary or tertiary goal. But what they're doing is actually enabling that to happen. So they're helping the security teams go and communicate with businesses, the business, in a way that they can understand and work with them to try and resolve some of the risks that they find from the assessments that they do. And then thirdly, I asked them the question about, for some you might sound a little bit like a CASB. I really liked how he answered it, actually. He said, first of all, when I talk to people, they're just not that enamored or not happy with their CASBs right now. And in fact, the CASB players are figuring out how they expand their offering into the secure service edge space. So they're adding in things such as web gateway and ZTNA and things like that. So they're all focused on making their customers happy by doing more things around that area. And that's not what Valence is doing. Valence is actually tackling something completely different. So I think the point he was making was their eyes are all over there, expanding and adding functionality, when really there's this whole underserved part of the market that we're tackling over here that is just as impactful. So I thought that was an interesting way to handle it, right? It kind of was what might be seen by some as a direct question that's maybe a little bit kind of confrontational. You sound just like something else. He actually turns it around really nicely and to explain the market dynamics a little bit, and therefore teeing up why Valence is so relevant. So I liked how he did that, and looking forward to catching up with Valence team at the Innovation Sandbox next week at RSA, and wish them every success for this year and next year.